guys, what's up? It's Emily. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I would really appreciate a subscription, please. I mean, if you like the video and you watch some of my other videos and you like it, just hit the subscribe button. No pressure. Anyway, I put out new videos every Tuesday and Friday. I do a lot of book content, some lifestyle content, some travel content. I'm an actor, singer. I live in Brooklyn. I run my own business. I work from home. I read a lot. And I basically got back into reading as an adult like a little over a year ago. And there's one author that I've probably read the most of, and that author is Colleen Hoover. I know that she is a bit of a polarizing author. I do feel like some people that are like readers that have been reading for years and years and years and years, sometimes I feel like they just don't like her because she's mainstream. Whatever. Love her, hate her. I do think that she writes books that move very quickly, are very emotional character studies, and are very easy to read if you're looking to get back into reading. This is definitely an author that I recommend checking out. Something that I really respect about Colleen Hoover is that she was like self-published for a very long time, independently published, and she just has so many books, and she's just, I feel like, a real hustler, and all of her books really have her stamp on it, and I just really respect her as an author. I think a lot of times with her books, like, the characters that she writes are not perfect, but I think that a lot of times with those books, it's more of a reflection of like what reality is actually like, and I think she tells very truthful, complicated stories, and she does it very emotionally. Like, I feel like I cry almost every time I read a Colleen Hoover book. The way she writes characters, especially like male characters, like I've never emotionally related to a male character more than the male characters in her books. So I've basically read at this point, let's see, maybe like 14 or 15 Colleen Hoover books, and I just kind of wanted to share with you the ones that I've read, what I've thought about them, and how I recommend them, who I recommend them for, etc. I do have to say, a lot of these books have some sort of content or trigger warning, so just kind of look that up before you start reading. There's a lot of these can be a little more intense. I think it's important to just take care of yourself before you read something like that. So let's get into it. So I'm gonna go in order that I've read them. The first Colleen Hoover book I read was Verity, and I gave this book to a friend, so I don't have the hard copy. This book, I went to the bookstore with my mom, and I was like, do you have any reading recs? And she was like, Verity, but she was like, it's so scandalous, and like, I can't believe I'm recommending this book to you. It was a little spicy, but like, it wasn't like anything that crazy. I don't know. So Verity is a little different from the rest of Colleen Hoover books in the sense that like she doesn't really typically write thrillers, and Verity is a thriller. It's about this girl, Lowen, I think I want to say it. Yeah. And this is also like one of her most popular books. I would say probably like top 2, top 3. And I have not read, a special edition came out of Verity that has like a new chapter, which kind of sets it up for a sequel. I have not read that yet, but soon. So it's basically about this girl, Lowen. She is a writer who lives in New York, and she's really like, she's broke. She's not doing well financially. And she gets this offer from this woman's husband, this woman called Verity, to basically finish this manuscript that she was working on, but then she got into this accident and she's unable to finish it, and her husband is basically like, your writing style is so much like my wife's, like, come finish. So she literally moves into their home to finish this book, and like Verity lives in the home, but she's basically like, she can't walk, she can't talk, she like can't do anything after this accident. Yeah, it basically goes back and forth between what's actually happening and then this manuscript that she found of Verity's, and I guess that's all I'll say, but it definitely is creepy. I've definitely read books that like are a little creepier. A lot of people love this book. It's like a 5-star read for them. For me, it's like maybe a 4-star read. The ending is really interesting, and I think it does provoke some pretty interesting discussions. So that's all I'll say. I think that if you're looking to get back into reading Verity, among all these other books, but specifically Verity, I think is a really great book to start with, because it really, like, you're really just gonna flip through the pages. Okay, the next book is probably her most popular book. It's being made into a movie that I read, is It Ends With Us. I read this book, I feel like, right before the hype happened around it. So it basically is about this girl, Lily, who she moves to, I think, Boston? Yeah, she moves to Boston to start her own business. She meets this guy on the roof who is literally like having an aggressive meltdown with himself. Then they like run into each other at a different point and then they start dating. And it covers their relationship and goes back and forth between that timeline and then when Lily was younger, like a teenager. It's like a then and now type thing. This is definitely one that I would check out the trigger warnings for. It's really emotional, really heart-wrenching, I guess, and a little disturbing too. And you have to read like the afterword that Colleen Hoover wrote. That like really is the thing that sent me over the edge. I remember reading this. I read it so fast. I read it at my receptionist job and I was just like sitting at my desk like silently weeping. If you haven't read this and you're looking to get into reading, like definitely give this a read if you can handle kind of like the content warnings. The next book I gave to my mom. It's a little bit more of a like young adult book. I literally picked this book up with no expectations. It's called Heartbones. And I feel like since I read it, it's also kind of she like redid the cover and I feel like it's every time I go to a bookstore, it's there. So I think it's starting to get a little bit more hype. But it was published back in like 2015 or 2016. So basically Heartbones opens, this is not even a spoiler, like it's literally the first chapter. It opens with this girl, Bea, I think is her name. She finds her mom dead from an overdose and she's like, well, I guess I'll go live with my dad and his new rich wife in this like she literally goes from living in a trailer park with her mom who's addicted to drugs who just died to living in this really nice house with her new step family. And she meets Sam, I want to say is his name, Samson. She meets Samson, who is this rich guy from, I think they're like on an island or something. Where are they? On a peninsula in Texas. And it's really a really interesting character study in class. I like really enjoy this and it's actually surprisingly kind of a beach read, but it's very emotional. I think I probably give it like a 4.5 out of 5. I would really recommend this one. It's like one of her maybe lesser known books, starting to become a little bit more known, but it's really good. Okay, next, a book I also lent to my mom. This is like one of my favorite books of all time. 5 out of 5. Wept, sobbed, ugly cried. Reminders of him. I've talked about this a lot in my other book videos. It's about this girl, Kenna, who's coming out of jail. She just served for 5 years. And she is trying to gain custody of her daughter who's been living with the father of her daughter's parents. It's just basically about her navigating like post-jail life, I guess. That journey to like reconnecting with her daughter. I think she gave birth in jail, so she like doesn't know her daughter at all. Her daughter's like 4 or 5 years old. It's a lot, but it's amazing. I think it's my favorite Colleen Hoover book, and it's also one of my favorite books of all time. And I don't know really what else to say about it without giving anything away, but I would love to see this as a movie, and I would also love to play Canon, just saying. The next book I do have the hard copy of. It's November 9th. A lot of people don't like the guy in this, and I kind of understand that. The plot twist was a little bit okay. It's a Colleen Hoover book, so I really enjoyed reading it, and like I really loved both of the characters and felt very connected to the story and the emotions, and I read it very quickly. It's about this girl, what's her name? Fallon, who was in this fire. She basically has burns all over her body, and it kind of opens with her in this scene in a diner with her dad, and her dad is like being an ass to her. This guy, Ben, comes up to her and like pretends to be her boyfriend and is like, don't talk to my girl that way, like, and kind of like defends her. They basically just decide that they're gonna meet every day on November 9th for like 5 or 6 years. If they still want to be together after that, then they'll be together. So it kind of just documents every November 9th with them. It's definitely cute. This is one of those books that like some people don't like. I didn't mind it. I'd probably give it like a 4 out of 5. And again, like it's such a quick read. Like these books are so quick. This one was cool. And it takes place in LA too. I always love that as a setting. As a New Yorker, it's a nice little escape for me. Okay, the next book that I read is It Starts With Us, which is the sequel to It Ends With Us, and it basically documents, I don't know how to explain this book without spoiling It Ends With Us. What I will just say is it is a very like snug, happy answer to It Ends With Us. Like the differences in the covers, like this seems emotional. It's literally like shattered flowers, and this is like, you know, little cute little flowers like floating in water in the sun. This is a lot more digestible and less sad, and like what I like about it is like you already know the characters so well, so you just kind of want to see them thrive, and that this book kind of gives that to you. Glorious and touching. An excellent way. USA Today nailed it. Like, an excellent way to describe this. I really loved this. I read it very quickly and I highly recommend it. It looks like a summer book, and I guess all books can be summer books. I mean, really. It didn't feel like a beach read, even though it looks like one. Just FYI. But you should still read it. After that, I read Confess, which was such a, like, unexpected good story. I don't know how to explain this book. It's basically about this girl, Auburn, who gets this job at an art gallery owned by this guy named Owen, and he has some secrets, and his secrets kind of affect her, and I don't know how else to say it, but Owen has this installment in his art gallery where people write like anonymous confessions and put them in a box, and that kind of plays into their dynamic. I don't really know how else to describe this without completely spoiling it. Like, I just read the back and it really doesn't give you any information about what the book's about. But this is one of those books, my mom got it at Costco for me because it was just like available. This was like really not on my list. So I was like, yeah, sure, I'll read it. And I really liked it. I would give this like a solid 4 out of 5, and I would definitely recommend reading it. Again, like a quick read, and I really, really connected to the characters. And there was one character that I hated. It always makes you connect more to the other characters when there's like such an antagonist that like really gets under your skin in such a raw way, and that definitely had this. Yeah, I love it. Recommend. Next, I read the Maybe Someday series. There are 3 books in this series. The first book is definitely, I think, the best book in the series, just Maybe Someday. So it's about this girl, Sydney, who finds out her boyfriend is cheating on her with her roommate, I want to say. With her best friend. Yeah, with her best friend and roommate, Tori. And she ends up moving like across the street into this apartment with these 2 guys who like have a band. This neighbor that she moves in with, he plays guitar on his balcony every night, and he's this kind of like mysterious guy, and then you find out some stuff about him later on in the book. God, Sydney, like, I loved her and I loved all the other characters in it, and I really, really felt like I knew them. And so reading the next 2 books, maybe not. That was a novella about kind of like 2 side characters in the book. It was like good. I'd probably give the second book like a 3.5 out of 5, but like I would still recommend reading it because it's so quick and like it gives you context into the next book. Maybe Now was a lot longer than it needed to be. I wanted it. There was stuff that like just kept going on and on. I was like, okay, like I get it. I get this thing. And there were other like elements of it that I like wished that Colleen Hoover explored a little bit more, and it was a little longer than I had wanted it to be. Because the first book like established these characters so well, I really enjoyed reading it still, just because I wanted more from the characters. And I think that's what Colleen Hoover does really well, is just like, you know the characters like so well immediately, the way that she writes. So I would recommend the series. It was a quick series too. Next, I read that series on my Kindle, so I don't have a hard copy of it. Also, I read on my Kindle All Your Perfects. I loved this book. I would give this a 5-star rating. I feel like people that are a little younger, that gear toward young adult, maybe don't love this book as much. It's about Quinn and Graham and their marriage. It goes back and forth between them kind of struggling their marriage now and when they first met, and like how great it was. It's such a powerful book about partnership and like what it means to be a good partner in a relationship. I like wept when I read it. It was just so sweet. It is a positive book. Like it's good. Like you feel good when you read it. The main reason that like their marriage is kind of falling apart, I don't know if I should reveal that. It's a heartbreaking page turner that asks, can a resounding love with a perfect beginning survive a lifetime between 2 imperfect people? And it's basically about like accepting your partner and like loving them, all their imperfections, really. It was just good. I loved this book. I feel like if you're in a long-term relationship, this is such a sweet read and good book to read. Next, I read Never Never. So this book was kind of re-released, and it was originally written as 3 shorter books, like 3 novellas totaling about 600 pages. And it was just re-released. I saw it in a bookshop and it was 300 pages, so I guess it's been condensed, but I read the long version of it on my Kindle. My only kind of negative feedback was that it kind of dragged on and on, so I'm sure if you read like the condensed version, it's better. It's about this couple. They're young, they're like in high school. They kind of come to in the middle of their school day and can't remember who they are or like anything about their lives. And it's just kind of like a story about soulmates and like they kind of have to figure out together like who they are and like why this happened to them and just all this stuff. And it was kind of like not satisfying, to be honest. Like this is one of those books I wouldn't not recommend it, but it is definitely not my favorite of her books. I would give it like a 3.5 out of 5. Next is Ugly Love, which is maybe her most polarizing book. I've talked about this in a few of my other videos, so I won't like drag on about it too long. I read this book so quickly. I read it during a 24-hour reading challenge, and it was like my 4th book, so I was like really in a groove, and I read it so quickly. So it's basically about this girl, Tate, that moves into her brother's apartment, and like the day she moves in, there's this drunk guy like blocking the door, and she calls her brother and she's like, yo, like there's this drunk guy blocking the door, and her brother's like, word, let me call my neighbor and ask him to deal with it. And then you realize that the drunk guy is the neighbor. They start kind of hooking up, kind of like a friends with benefits situation. He's very like unemotional, like very emotionally detached, and you don't really know why, and then you find out why, obviously. Book. I think a lot of the reasons that people have issues with this book is because they're like, she needs to like leave and like get out of this because it's very clear that she wants something that he's not giving her. I do feel like Colleen Hoover presents reality and like complex situations and complex people and situations that really happen. Like I think if she just kind of left, that would actually be unrealistic and oftentimes like not what really happens in these situations. You can be frustrated with the characters all you want. I don't feel frustrated with the author, if that makes sense. He has pretty legit reasons for like being the way that he is, and I think this book really offers a new perspective of there are reasons that people are the way that they are, and I think that that's important as well. I love when things are polarizing as an artist myself, as an actor, like a storyteller, because I think that that's when like conversations really happen, like really interesting conversations. So I really like this book just because it does that, and it's really made people talk about this and maybe think about it in a different way. So yeah, I'd probably give it like a 4.5 out of 5. This book, Regretting You, is the last Colleen Hoover book I've read. It's about, again, like this is one of those books I don't really know how to explain what it's about without like spoiling it. It's like a mother-daughter story. It's a mother-daughter story. They're nothing alike. They're kind of facing this tragedy together. It can either pull them apart or bring them together, and that's the best way I can explain it. It has kind of like a YA romance element in it too, but it's ultimately a mother-daughter story. I think I'd give it a 4 out of 5. This was honestly one of the slower books. It wasn't her strongest in my opinion, like character-wise, the way it was written. I also just think like the premise of this book is a little bit far-fetched for me to like be grounded in reality and like things that are like that could like possibly happen. But having said that, I still recommend it. There is not a Colleen Hoover book that I would not recommend, honestly. So those are all of the Colleen Hoover books that I've read so far and just kind of my thoughts on them. I think whether you're a new reader or not, mixing some Colleen Hoover in with your reads is always a good idea. I personally love, I'm an actor, like I love character studies, and it's rare to find like a good character study book that is emotionally well written, and all of her books are like that. So I just really love the way that she writes, the way that she writes characters, the way that she writes relationships, and the way people relate to each other. I guess that kind of wraps it up. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you see, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Comment below if there's any Colleen Hoover books that I have not read yet that you'd really recommend, or if you have any thoughts about any of the books that I talked about. Also, feel free to follow me on Goodreads. That will be in my description below, linked to that. I love updating my Goodreads. It's so fun. It makes me feel excited to read. I love their reading challenges that they have. My goal is to read 52 books this year like I did last year. I think I'm a little behind, but getting caught up. So yeah, give me a little follow on there. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.